Hello, good evening, and welcome to a special episode of the Wednesday week. My name's Dan Fudge, and it's my Wednesday time once again. It's a bit of a special guest we've got this evening. It's commentator from our big day out at Wembley, alongside the big man himself in Atdhe Nuhiu. It's Rob O'Neill. Rob, good afternoon and welcome to the show. You all right?
Yeah, very well, thank you. Yeah, good to see you.
Have you? Did you join in the celebrations before or afterwards? Because I'm still on a 4-day hangover right now.
Yeah, it was quite a weekend. I mean, to be honest, I'll be honest, it seems to have taken the best part of a week to try and get back down to normality. I mean, I'm still drained, to be honest. It's you're building towards the weekend. I've just been talking to you off air as well about trying to make sure all the technical side of things are right. So that was an extra strain. You're worrying about it going wrong from that side of things. You then get on air, you open everything's fine from that point of view, and then obviously there's the football equation as well, which is the easiest part in some ways, but obviously it wasn't easy. It was far from easy. We left it very late, but it was quite the fairy tale in the end.
Yeah, the game wasn't a classic, was it at all? I mean, there wasn't a lot to write home about. We recorded our show last night, and I remember thinking, and normally I try and get the highlights and all the bits, talking points, and I managed to get 11 at a push. You know what I mean? So when Volt scored, that would have been a great goal to take us through, wouldn't it? But I mean, the view that you got, I've got quite the burned face right now. I've got half a bottle of moisturizer shellacked into my forehead right now. But you were up in the gods with the big man himself. How was that?
Well, it was great working with him from that point of view. Our angle was really weird. We're sort of almost looking at the match from a diagonal. We're on the sort of almost in the Barnsley sort of section. So we had their fans sort of in and around us, and we're watching it. It was very weird. I kept thinking of the old Stamford Bridge where it used to look like, and the fans were miles away from the pitch. And you see, it was like watching it from a very weird vantage point. I remember thinking the first 5-10 minutes, this is going to take a while getting used to watching the game from this angle, because it were a very odd position to be in. I mean, I don't think we had the best seats in the house. I don't think with that.
It's not your first time at Wembley, because obviously you were the chap in charge of the microphone in 2016 as well, alongside Lee Peacock. I mean, surely that's a better affair to talk about, isn't it, this time round?
Yeah, I mean, that feeling we had that day. I mean, you don't want to go to Wembley and lose that game. I mean, if you look at that game in kind of, with your honest eyes, I suppose, and without sort of having your Wednesday slant, Hull were just better than us. That was the reality of it. They had still a load of Premier League players, and whilst it was only one goal, I just came away from that game thinking that's the standard. That's what we need to be at. We need a big centre half. We need 2 or 3 players, and we'll be all right. And it's weird, isn't it? Aidan Flint came into our squad, this season, and he had a loan spell briefly a couple of seasons back. That was the type of centre back we needed to kind of push on, and we probably got Aidan maybe not at his peak level, but it was a completely different vibe, wasn't it? I mean, you look at these 2 last games in isolation, though. Yeah, that dramatic comeback in the semi-final and even the final. There's various things, and you just think maybe our name was on it. I think it's a great script. It's one of those, isn't it, where you kind of think Hollywood would reject this for being far-fetched, but it was some story, the whole thing.
The weird thing is, for no reason whatsoever, I was at the 2008 playoff final to get to the when his dad scored the absolute scorcher of a volley that he did against Bristol City. So in terms of the Windass family, I'm the I'm the top boy. They need me there, apparently.
Yeah, they do. Yeah, exactly. I mean, I actually went and worked in Hull. I think I joined about a year after that. So everyone was talking about, Dean's goal at Wembley and stuff. So I just missed that when I came into work for KCFM, which was covering Hull City and everything like that. So it's kind of weird. I say there are little things, like odd quirks of fate or whatever you want to call it. I don't know if have you seen those pictures that have been put out with, Gregory delivers the wagons. Yeah. I saw that, I think, a week ago or something like that. There's just little things you just think, was this written in the stars? And I'll be honest with you, in my own head, people will ask me sometimes, do I premeditate a goal clip or, something I'm going to come out with? And 9 times out of 10, I don't really. But I did have, that line about Windass's dad, in my mind. It was there. It just kept replaying before it happened. So maybe it was always sort of written in the stars.
I'm I'm all right with it. You know what I mean? I had a hell of a day. I got a great tan when it calms down. You know what I mean?
Yeah, but
So
we all need a win. That's Wembley winner, don't we? That's the key.
that is the rules now, apparently. So let's delve into the to what you referenced earlier, the Wednesday slant. You know what I mean? I assume you're a Sheffield Wednesday fan from being a boy, or is it something that you've adopted commentating on the team?
No, I mean my first game watching Sheffield Wednesday, I think I probably was about 8 or 9 or something like that. Um, I mean, I'm not from Sheffield. I'm actually from down south. I was born in Barnstable, but I came up to York and I lived there. As I say, from about 7 or something like that. I think one of our neighbours was a big Sheffield Wednesday fan. So the first ever match I went to was Wednesday against Queens Park Rangers. I think the likes of Lee Chapman were playing. You know, probably
Wow.
Mel Sterland, Mark Smith, that sort of era, and we won 7-1. It was, I thought, oh, this is how it's going to be always. I
Right.
thought this is normality, but it clearly wasn't. We've been up and down all the time throughout my reign. But I mean, my formative years, should we say, were, I couldn't have asked for a better team to watch. The early 90s, I was growing up on your David Hurst, your Chris Waddles, Paul Warhurst, John Harks, all those guys, Shez. What a team
Mhm.
that was to watch.
Mm-hmm. And it's those ones that kind of suck you in, isn't it? Because I think you and I must be a similar age then. Because during I think I was about 10, 11 when we signed Chris Waddle, and then that's when I got my season ticket, and I started going for the next 10 years. There's a point where you kind of look back, isn't there, where you go, we had this amazing team with these
Oh,
amazing players, and nobody we didn't seem to keep up as teams were making their teams better, and
yeah.
it was the foray into the foreign market and things like that. We didn't really utilize that market really well when we look back.
No, we got a lot of things wrong. I suppose it's interesting because I talk to my son who's like 8 now, and he talks about Man City or Man United, all these
Mhm.
other teams, and I'm like, we were on par with them, if not better at times. We could have won what was it's not called the Premier League at that stage; it was called the First Division, but we could have won it. We were within a whisker of doing that. We got to 2 cup finals in the same season. People played Sheffield Wednesday, and they feared Sheffield Wednesday.
Mm.
We were an elite team, weren't we, back in the early 90s?
Absolutely, and so was this the era in which you had your favorite players, or like do you look back and think like, well, when you were probably about 17, 18, you've got Carboni and Di Canio and big names like Mark Pembridge. I mean, have you got like a favorite player? I normally try and ask this question, like, have you got a favorite player outside Waddle, Hurst, and Sheridan?
I used to have a soft spot for Warhurst, and that was before he was a centre forward. When he got
Hmm.
converted, and he literally everything he did went in the back of the net. But I loved him as a centre back because I used to remember he could carry the ball out from the back, and he used to get to the edge of the area, play a 1-2, and then it get messed up. Then you have to run all the way back because someone did play the return ball. But I love seeing centre halves that can carry the ball, and almost glide very elegantly, through. I mean, we've had one or two that have, a similar sort of ilk. Not too many, but I think Bugera was a bit like that, wasn't he? He could bring the ball and carry it, and that was a bit special. But yeah, I mean, he was someone that I used to really like. I worked with David Hurst as well at Real Radio, but he was a legendary striker. People don't realise how good David Hurst was. He was
Hmm.
better than Shearer. And everyone
Hmm.
raves about historically how great Alan Shearer was, and he was. He was a very good centre forward.
Sorry, Rob,
But
I've just
Hurst,
lost your sound there. My apologies. I got
oh,
everybody raves about, and then it just came back in. So try
I
me
said
again.
everyone raves about Alan Shearer, and he had a great career. But
Hmm.
Hursty, if he hadn't had all those injuries, he had everything: left foot, right foot, power, pace. He was the complete centre forward. I mean, he was a joy to watch. Even, I suppose, preempting that, we had Dalian Atkinson as well. We had two players, and I always like strikers that can make their own goals.
Hmm.
Even if the team's playing rubbish, they can just pick the ball up and do something out of the blue. More recently we've had Fernando. Benny Carboni could do the same thing. He was someone that I had a soft spot for as well. Di Canio was great, but I wouldn't say he was ever my favourite. I always preferred Carboni, but yeah, you like those players that are going to get you off your seat and really get you going.
So, I mean, moving forward, I've got like a weird blank, and it's about 10 years, right?
Mm.
Where from the year we got relegated to about 2010 when I started doing this show, actually. So like there's a weird bit where we really struggled to kind of find our stride as where we sat as a club. And trying to remember players from that era, I always have like a bit of a blank. You know what I mean? Where I remember I was working on a cruise ship one year, and a guy came up to me, and we were planning this pros against passengers football game. And one of the players come up to me and said, "Oh, you're a Wednesday fan?" I said, "Yeah." He said, "Oh, I used to play for them." And I couldn't recognize him for love the money. And it was Ashley Westwood, right? I'm
Right.
like,
Okay.
which one are you again? I just have I have an absolute blank. So
Yeah.
so when you look back, it's probably obviously 2006 was 2005 2006 was a big season when all of a sudden I started to get to the players. But that period for me is a real blank. So where were you during that period? Because I obviously work in entertainment as it is. I mean, albeit sports based, you can kind of lose touch a little bit, right?
Yeah, but I was working at Real Radio from 2000, so I was actually covering Wednesday sort of loosely. We didn't do as much sport as we ever should have done, but I was already, down at Hillsborough. That's why when I actually got the gig to do the I Follow or whatever it was called back then, commentary, I'd sort of been on the periphery of doing Wednesday things.
Mm-hmm.
I'd presented programs, I did a couple of special programs at Real, so I was down the training ground. So I did have that connection with that group of players. I know what you mean though about perhaps not having great memories, because when we dropped out of the Premier League, we didn't have a beam, did we? I mean, it was there was a lot of kids that came into the first team that were thrust into there. Del Geary, Alan Quinn had just come through the year we went down. There was a Kevin Nicholson who wasn't a regular, but he was coming through at the same time. We had a good crop of players, that came through, or maybe they would have been good. Perhaps they didn't fulfill their potential because we threw too many of them all at once because we were relying on them. Matt Hamshaw was coming through at the same time. I mean, someone who excited me at that point was Owen Morrison. He was an exciting
Mm-hmm.
player. He had a lot of qualities. He was a little guy, but he could bend the ball in, and he seemed like he could be someone to be a sort of salvation. But the managers, Paul Jewell came in, Peter Streves. We had Terry Orathall knocking about. We never seemed to really have a manager, I don't think, of the caliber you kind of need perhaps to get out of that division. We didn't have the players really. I mean, you're almost looking at someone like Sabon, again, a sort of icon in some ways, but idle in another ways as well, because you didn't know what you're going to get out of him. So, yeah, it was a bit of a mismatch, wasn't it? And even when we did dip into the market, before we got it right, you've got your Kim Olsons, your Ulla Tidmans, not great names to recall, Ian Hendon, all out their depth really for Sheffield Wednesday, but we didn't have the budget, so we were shopping at Aldi really, or somewhere more bargain basement than that probably.
Absolutely. So tell me the process then. So you've gone to this game, you've won 7-1, and then 13 to 15 years later you're now essentially working for the club, right? And was that a dream come true for you a little bit, or was that just, did you feel like you expected it and it should have happened type of thing?
No, not really. I mean, because I had quite a long career, full time in radio, and a lot of like the stuff I did was like reporting, presenting, bulletin reading, that side of it. And I hadn't done too many commentaries as such. And I remember,
Mm-hmm.
because I say I was over in Hull, as I said to you, and I didn't really put myself forward. Even there, I could have put myself forward to do the commentaries for Hull City, and I didn't because we had someone already there, but I did want to kind of bring somebody else in as well. But I didn't really put myself forward because I don't know. I was a bit nervous about doing it, to be honest. I just thought, could I do it? Would I be confident doing it? Because I've done a little bit of it, but nothing, major. Reports, off-air commentary, that type of thing.
Mm-hmm.
But once I started it, I love doing it. Like even this final we've just had. I was given the choice: do I want to go as a fan? Do I want to commentate? And I actually quite like being in the thick of it. I actually quite like, having the mic there. So I think I'd be a bit lost if I wasn't doing that. I actually quite like, have you seen some of the stuff that came out of the semi-final, like, the Liam Palmer quotes that were knocking
Yes,
around,
they're on
Mission
t-shirts
Impossible.
now.
T-shirts, flags, it's just amazing. That's just something that literally that one just popped into my head. I mean, I kind of thought about Mission Impossible, but I didn't know that Liam was going to be the star, and I think the rest of it just came out and it worked. So happy days.
I must admit, right? So, as somebody who, which may shock you, I like a chat, and I always think I'm great at everything. I look at commentating as a role, and
Yeah.
I couldn't do it. I look at the amount of prep that needs to go in, and if I don't automatically recognize the players, I won't be able to engage my brain to read, to pop back up at the notes that I've made or anything like that. And for somebody who likes making constant noise, I genuinely, my hat is off to you, Rob, because I mean, how did you find that transition into that live commentary as opposed to doing match reports?
Yeah, that's exactly what I was saying to you. I was a bit daunted by the idea because
Mm.
it is a very different sort of skill set. Um, and you are constantly, it's quite, people don't get how taxing it is as well when you're constantly sort of describing and watching, and like sometimes you get a bit of like brain fatigue in the second half because you just hit a bit of a wall sometimes. You have to kind of carry on, and particularly some games, like when it isn't a great watch and you're just describing and you're like, this is hard work. I mean, the best ones are when there's lots happening, they're great tempo, and you're almost going da 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 da. That is actually easier because it's you're not even thinking about it. But the games where they're knocking it about, it's going short, back to the keeper, and there's no natural rhythm, they can be quite hard to kind of plow through. I mean, Atdhe Nuhiu said to me before the game, well, this is actually in the days leading up to it. He said, is there anything I need to know? And I kind of gave him a few little notes, but not major, because I'll guide most people through it. I like to be kind of quite relaxed with it, and I like to think when I have a guest, whether it's John or somebody that is an ex-player or even a current member of the squad, that I'll make it very conversational. So don't worry about kind of what you don't know or what you don't do, because I'll fill the hole. And if you're uncertain about something, or maybe it's going into a direction you don't want to go in, perhaps it's a comment or about an individual, you don't want to sound too critical, then I'll always bring it back around and let them sort of skip it without noticing it.
That's very generous of you there. That's very gracious. Because I mean, some of the names that you've been alongside, so we mentioned Nuhiu, you did the final in 2016 with Peaks.
Yeah.
And I don't know if you know, I met you on the tube afterwards, and I had to give Lee Peacock his he was collecting for charity at this point, and he had
Right.
these two money shakers with him because he was doing he was on a bike ride to raise money for charity to all the I think it was the World Cup or the European Championships grounds in France. And
Okay.
he said, Dan, can you hold these? I said, yeah, of course. Forgetting that I'm going into the ground, right? And so as he came to meet you, I was stood with these two shaker tins, these charity tins, and they wouldn't let me in the ground. Because they have their own charities and
Right. Yeah.
their offensive weapons or something like that. So I had to have them signed over, and then it took an hour to get them back. Honestly, Peacock stitched me up. They nearly didn't let me in for the playoff final.
I didn't know that story. I didn't know what was going on, the shenanigans behind the scenes.
Yeah. So, I mean, tell me what it's like working with John, because I genuinely enjoy the dynamic. Because, like you say, it's quite conversational. There's some wonderful points where John loses his absolute bananas, like when Sheffield Wednesday score, especially like when it's one of those last minute ones, like the one against Rotherham that Kieran Lee scored, or the one against Bristol City that Kieran Lee scored.
Again. Yeah. There's a pattern emerging there. Yeah.
Yeah, and he absolutely loses his mind. And you're still trying to commentate and describe what's going on. I get distracted if somebody's clicking their fingers or whistling in the background. It has to be dead silent for me. How do you do that? Do you ever just want to go, John, we get it, pal. Give me a minute. Let me.
But it's almost like, am I going to be heard of this? Or are you just going to drown me out? Because sometimes that's what happens. You're almost like straining your voice trying to get above him. I think someone said to me in one of the games, it must have been, I think it was the Peterborough games, even you were louder than John at some point. I apologise, but it was quite a big moment. These goals. But I just think we've got a good dynamic. It works. Some people don't like it. Some broadcasters don't like the summariser kind of interjecting and would probably say, can you just let the goal play out, let the commentator do it, and then we'll get your reaction. I actually quite like it, and I think that's the difference perhaps from doing it when you are doing it for the club. you are doing it as you're doing it as as the fans' perspective, aren't you? I'd like to think we've got quite a fair balance though, because I don't want to be seen to be totally biased towards Wednesday, because that's just not what you want to hear. I don't want to say it's all rosy when it's not rosy. Equally, I'm not going to bash the team or the club because we're working for them. But it's finding that happy medium really. And if we think that perhaps it wasn't a penalty, we'll say it's not a penalty. But I hope we get the balance right. People are going to say, opposing fans, oh, they're biased or whatever. Well, why are you listening to a Wednesday channel? Because ultimately, we're not hiding the fact we're Sheffield Wednesday fans, because we are.
In reference to that, actually, there are some ones that are absolutely awful. The Barnsley one does pop to mind, like when Barnsley did the double overs, the away game at Oakwell. I had to watch the coverage with the Barnsley commentary. That was one of the worst. It was like two people doing an impression of the Hovis advert from the 80s. You know what I mean? Now then, I was, oh, we're right good, are we? We're good at kick ball over here, and that's how good. Barnsley, this, it was up. There were some other ones. The Plymouth one was that you could, when someone's trying to be balanced and trying to be modest, when they actually just want to go down the microphone. There was a lot of that, and but like. I absolutely I feel like you and John have got quite a good partnership there, and you've absolutely found your level with it, and there's a comfort with it, isn't there? And you're right, there isn't a John speak to me when you're spoken to type of vibe, which is probably what some of them get told, right?
Yeah, I think you just go with it. People want to hear, that's how you're all celebrating. If you're not at the grounds, you're all going nuts at the pub or people on the beach, because we get a lot of international viewers and subscribers. You're all doing the same thing. We're trying to convey that same energy to kind of make you feel almost like you're there with us. So that's what you're trying to do. And equally, if we weren't there with the microphone, we would be jumping up and down and singing and doing whatever. I mean, John had me singing as well, didn't he? Go into extra time. He likes to do the hi ho Sheffield Wednesday, and I don't really want my voice going out. You might all be singing and thinking you're great singers, but you don't have a microphone just like a couple of inches away from your mouth.
Hi ho, Sheffield Wednesday! There you go, they've got us in union there.
But we did actually both sing in tandem, and I put a clip out for someone who asked me to clip it the other day. And yeah, we get caught up in it, and we enjoy what we do, I think. And we don't take it too seriously either. I take the mick out of him as well. He's a much better footballer than I ever was, and but I still diss him like he was like some Sunday League player, and he clearly wasn't. But it's a bit of banter,
Yeah, to be fair, I'd like to get John on there and just sort of pick his brains about what he's like working with you. He might come on here and slag you off loads, Rob. You know what I mean? So looking back on some of the moments that you've been commentating on Sheffield Wednesday, obviously you've got Monday just gone. You've got the semi-final. Must have been a great one.
Yeah, it was.
Are there any other ones that kind of stick out to you that we might have forgotten? Like there might have been a last-minute goal against Preston or something. That, you know what I mean? Have you got any more that really stick in your mind, or is it difficult to think back further than Monday?
Yeah, putting me on the spot. I mean, I think there was an away game at Bramall Lane. Didn't we come back from 2-0 down to get it back to 2-2? I think that was a pretty good game. Medine scored. I can't remember the details, but I think we had a comeback against the Blades. That was
we did.
Special. There's also a goal, and this preempts me doing the commentary. This was when I was at Real, so I was doing reports for Real Radio, and I think I did like off-air commentary, so we still described the goals and things. And I remember Lloyd Owusu's goal. I don't know what we recorded on it, but the sound that it made, my voice made a noise that I think even dogs would have issues with. I don't know what happened. I don't know whether it was the way it was recorded, like it was too loud, and like the compression or something, and it was clipping or something. But there's a very strange sound that was generated. But that was a pretty awesome goal and celebration. I think I quite enjoyed that one. I'm just saying individual games. You mentioned Kieran Lee. That was a good one. Even the Atdhe one as well. I played that back to him in the game at half time, actually, at Wembley when he scored against Preston. And he was like saying, everyone's expecting him to keep the ball in the corner flag, and it just suddenly started opening up for him. And he thought, I might go here. The way he went and stuck it in top corner. So that was good. So there's moments and there's games. You know, it's hard when you put me on the spot to remember. I can remember some pretty miserable times, and you know, the Rotherham when they scored late when we took that awful corner with Brown failing to get it past the front post. That season, going down, relegation, it wasn't pleasant. That and there are some games where it's not pleasant. You just can't see us getting a result, and you're trying to stay positive with it. Yeah, there's a few. It's hard when you put me on the spot to.
Sorry, I should have given you some notes, but I like it when it's raw, Rob. You know what I mean? I like it when you go that one straight away.
Come to me midnight. I go, oh wow, I forgot to mention that.
Yeah, just tweet me over them and just go. Oh, by the way, there was this game against Fleetwood that I really remembered. Like it, you know what I mean?
I try not to remember games against Fleetwood or Cheltenham or Shrewsbury because, to be honest, that's all wrong, isn't it? I'm so glad we are out of League One because I do think the standard's been rubbish. Most of the teams
been really poor, hasn't it? Like the teams we've got, and there was like about 4 or 5 teams that, if you looked at there was a playoff picture where it was like Barnsley, Bolton, us, and Derby County at one point. Yeah. And I remember thinking that is a really solid lineup for that would have been a championship lineup not that long ago. So the standard's getting better, but you look further down the bottom of that league, and it was and they all came across like Sunday League teams, but they were really happy to be there, like Fleetwood being in League One. They're well happy with that. They're having the best time. And I think
it was last season and it probably, without studying the league table as it finished this year, I remember looking at the league table last year, and it kind of does go almost as you'd expect, in terms of budget, size of club, all that side. You almost could stick that order, maybe reshuffle a few at the bottom, but it's kind of like the big ones at the top, and you're not going to get that many surprises. Very rarely you're going to get somebody going top that kind of doesn't seem to belong to that. You're not going to see Forest Green at that level. It's just too big a jump for them.
Absolutely not. So listen, I can't let you go, but I'm a bit aware of time without talking to you about Atdhe Nuhiu. I would absolutely love to sit and have a beer with Atdhe Nuhiu and pick his brains about his time with Sheffield Wednesday. Did you get to have that interaction with him in the build-up or during the day?
Well, I spoke to him a few days beforehand because, I was aware that John was wanting to go as a fan for this one, as he did back in 2016 when Lee filled in. So I kind of wanted to get a guest that had a bit of kudos, it just, I suppose was relevant, shall we say, to the current generation, because there are some fans that won't remember maybe John, for example. They didn't see him play. So it's quite nice to get some more current ones every now and then. And I was thinking, well, who could we get that would kind of have that wow factor? I did think Sam Hutchinson. Obviously, Sam had done it with me a couple of times before. And I thought, again, he might want to come back. He still knew a lot of the squad members. Unfortunately, that didn't work out. I think he was away. We were even thinking about getting Antonio as well, because if you remember, he was part of the last promotion from this division. And that didn't work out in the end. I don't know whether West Ham allowed it or not, because they were, still in Europe and everything. So Atdhe was someone else I thought about, but I actually thought Atdhe might not be. I thought he might come because I know he cares a lot about Sheffield Wednesday. I reached out to him, but I knew he was in Austria. They've also been fighting relegation as well, so that their season hadn't quite finished. And straight away, he's like, I'd love to do it. I would love to do it. He had to obviously run it by his club. But as soon as he reached out, an authorization was given. He was made up, And this was a guy that was coming over from Austria, getting flights, and then going back to training on Tuesday. He's really gone out of his way, to be with us. And he's not done it for a financial reward or anything like that. He wanted to be at Wembley. Initially, he told us in commentary, all the lads in his team in Austria were, I think, watching that second leg and getting kind of caught up in it, and watching all the drama unfold. And I think that his initial plan was they were all going to come over as a sort of group day out. We were going to have, 15 members of, I can't remember his team, some of the lower reaches of Austria. They were going to be, coming to Wembley to watch Sheffield Wednesday play because they kind of adopted us. And, they were all going, I think, can we listen to you, Atdhe, as well with the news, doing the commentary? So yeah, he's a really lovely guy. Love Sheffield Wednesday. You know, he was so concerned about saying the right thing, and you know, and I said, look, honestly, you've been great, absolutely amazing. We've loved having you with us. You know, the fans have commented on how good he was and how passionate he was, and you know, he loves Sheffield Wednesday. He was here 7, 8 years, something like that. He told us some nice bits as well. You know, he was talking. I think this was off air. I think it was. We were chatting about when he first came in. Dave Jones was manager. And he actually said to me, Stuart Gray, he said, he saved my life. And he kind of didn't mean it kind of actually literally, but he was meaning his footballing life in England, because he told him or taught him how to play centre forward in England. Because you all see him, don't you? 6'6", you know, you expect him to be a target man. That's how we play in this country, or we have done traditionally. And he didn't really play that way. That's not what his game was about. He learned how to play that type of game, but that was because Stuart took him to one side and gave him a few little pointers and said, like, this is what it's all about. And I think that's why he had a long career with Wednesday, because Stuart Gray got hold of him and said, right, do this, do that, and you'll be on the right track.
That is absolutely fascinating. I could talk about this all day. But listen, Rob, I'm gonna leave you with this clip of you and Atdhe Nuhiu celebrating the goal as it went in. Thanks a lot, Rob, for joining us. That's been my Wednesday. See you later.
Cameron Dawson puts it away up towards Lee Gregory. Doesn't quite know where that ball's gone. Comes back for Deli Bashiru. Can he get it back to him there, Gregory? It's still with Lee Gregory. He's in the box. Tries to screw it. Is it going to be there? Yes! Oh my word! It's in! Wednesday have done it! Just Witness, wasn't it? It's a Witness! Wembley winner! Yet again! Like father, like son! His dad Dean did it for Hull City back in 2008, and Wednesday have now done it with Josh in the final seconds of this game in extra time. A diving header, Barnsley are dead on their feet. Well, you know something about these games. They're big games, they're great occasions, but it's all about winners. There can only be one winner. What about that, Atdhe Nuhiu? Wednesday 1, Barnsley 0.
I just told you I hope they'll get one more chance. And you told me before that Josh Winter's father scored already in the final, so what do you want more?
It's the perfect script. A Windass Wembley winner it is.